I'm Scott Allen Miller. This is Sam IT, my kind of online free postgraduate university of all topics IT and business. All those things that universities are not teaching you and you can't readily find anywhere else. Trying to put together a real program, whether it's individual articles online or comprehensive series to help you understand more about our industry, both from a business and technological perspective. Today, I've been asked a number of times recently, it's come up a surprising amount, and I'm really excited to be bringing you a new series that we're starting today on what exactly is email. I know this sounds like the most boring topic you could possibly imagine in IT. Who does not know what email is? But surprisingly, most people I find, including full-time email administrators, are often at a loss when it comes to actually defining what email is, and many email products are in fact not even email. So we're going to start with what email is, but this is exciting for me because I actually started as an email administrator in 1994. I built my first system of my own somewhere between 2001 and 2003 that I built completely from scratch, assembled every component, and it was one of the best educational things I did at that stage in my career, learning every possible piece of email, assembling, choosing every component that went together to make a production system was an amazing experience and a lot of work at the time. Doing the same today is incredibly simple, but back then it was really hard and documentation was lean, to say the least. Since that time, I have run multiple email hosting companies. I have worked at the highest level with the largest organizations managing email platforms, including custom-built ones, and I have managed third-party email for countless companies. So I have a lot of experience in the email realm, and I hope to be able to bring a lot of that to you. So let's get started. On today's episode, on the very first piece, we're going to answer exactly what is email, what makes something an email message or an email transaction, because this is actually the key to understanding everything else that we're going to be talking about as we go through this series. This is the foundations, and I know it sounds boring, but stick with me. It's important to really nail this down, and it's going to seem like we're being pedantic. It's going to seem like this is about semantics, and in a way it is. But in IT, as with anything having to do with truth, determining exactly the semantics to maintain the truth is absolutely critical. Without semantics, truth becomes relative, and when truth is relative, it's not the truth anymore. So that's what we're looking for. What is actually email? And this is also important because there's a number of times that we deal with things that have legal requirements that mention email. Email does a thing, doesn't do a thing, is allowed, isn't allowed, and knowing what email actually is pretty important to following rules. Things like HIPAA regulations apply sometimes to email, and knowing if something is or isn't email is pretty important if you're trying to follow a HIPAA regulation, and knowing what is and isn't safe, where security happens, who's making those choices, and we can only do that by knowing email. So let's get started. In the early days, we knew we were going to want to have electronic messaging. As the concepts of electronic messaging were being kicked around, multiple mechanisms for sharing messages between computer systems began to arise. These systems together became known as email, and there were multiple protocols for this. One that was proposed and had really good traction was X400. In the long term, the only email protocol that survived what were known as the protocol wars was SMTP, or the Simple Mail Transport Protocol. You can technically have email that uses a different protocol, but it would be non-standard, and you would be able to speak to essentially no one in the world using an alternative protocol. You must use SMTP to be able to send or receive email from third parties on the outside. If you built your own system on both sides and wanted to send messages between yourself using something else, yes, technically, you could create an email platform using something other than SMTP. But in a practical sense, we can say that SMTP, the use of SMTP to send messages between computer systems, constitutes email. Say it one more time because it's important. It is the act of sending a computer message between systems, electronic messages passing between systems, Using the SMTP protocol is what makes something an email message. That may seem really straightforward, and yet in practice, almost no one agrees that this is true, but when we say it, we know it must be true. Now we're going to give an example, and we're going to break some things down using traditional post, using the mail system. So whether you live in the UK and it's post, America and it's the post office with the mail system, whatever. We pretty much all know if we write a letter to someone, it is not mail until we send it. It's just a piece of paper with a note on it. It is a letter, it is a note, it is a memo, it is a message, but it is not mail. To become mail, we must put it in an envelope, we must attach a stamp, we have to add a receiver's address, a to address, and optionally a return address. You're supposed to have a return address, but that's beside the point. Until we do that, it is not prepared to be mail, it's not packaged for mail, and until it is picked up for delivery, it is not mail yet. Now, there is some legal ground for is it mail when you put it into the mailbox to be picked up, or only after the mailman has taken it out of the mailbox. Well, we allow for a little bit of gray area there, but we will assume until the post office employee has taken it from the mailbox, it is not yet mail. But for legal reasons, once you put it into a mailbox, it is a federal crime in the United States to tamper with it. It is tamperable within the normal range of what papers you're allowed to tamper with until you put it into that mailbox. In the case of the U.S. mail system, the mailbox itself is considered part of the federal mail system, and therefore is governed under it. They actually have created a hard line on that demarcation point to allow for the law to be written that way. When we're dealing with electronic mail, this would be similar, right? And we don't have that questionable point of sending. Right. Typically, we send through an application that manages the protocol, and we know instantly either it has been accepted or hasn't. There isn't that moment of sitting in a spot to be picked up. But there can be, that is called a queue, and there is a moment where we could say, well, we tried to send it, but it hasn't happened yet. But we just defined the sending as SMTP protocol between computers. So if it's in a queue to be picked up, it's not actually email yet until it's been sent. So we have a different demarcation point because there is a hard line in the definition. The U.S. specifically moved the demarcation point for legal reasons. So I just want to make that clear because we're using that example. But we know pretty clearly that as long as that mail is in the mailbox, in the carrier's pouch, in the mail truck, being delivered, whether it's in a sorting facility or out for delivery or whatever, it is mail. It is a message moving between places. When it gets put into the recipient's mailbox, it is still mail. At the moment that they take it out of their mailbox, we do use the term loosely. You come home, you take the mail out of the mailbox, you go inside the house, you put it on the kitchen table. What is this? That's the mail. We use that term, but we all know, we all accept very clearly that we're loosely saying these are the messages and letters sent via the mail. It is not actually the mail itself. The mail itself is the delivery mechanism. It is the person, the truck, the sorting office, and all those things. We all know the moment we remove it from the mailbox and have it in our personal possession, it is not actually mail. It is something we received via mail, but it is not mail. It is just a letter, just a magazine, just garbage, whatever it is that came via mail. Once we've taken it out of the mailbox, we know it isn't mail anymore. The same is true of email. Email is only a reference to the SMTP transfer protocol duration while it is moving between computer systems. That is it. A system that talks on the SMTP protocol and handles that transaction is called an MTA, or a mail transport application. The MTAs are the only thing that make it mail. Anything that talks email is an MTA. That's just how it works. So we can relate this to real life, to physical mail really easily, which is why it has the term email. It operates an awful lot like real world mail does. That analog is really important. It helps us understand it, and it's going to be the core of everything we're going to be discussing during this series. So I'm actually going to stop this first video right there. We didn't actually cover that much, but what we covered is crazy important, and I want to be able to reference back to this video many times and say, wait, watch this video, because the thing we're going to ask is it mail? and that's going to come up over and over again, and those questions will come to this. There's a bunch of things that we could say about mail, how it normally works, how it's expected to work. I don't want to go into those because they're not actually part of the definition of mail. Mail is simply the electronic messages passing between the computers using the SMTP protocol. Other things are common usages, other things are conventions, other things are abnormal, other things are new additions, extensions. All of that is fine. We have to look at the core definition to really know what we're talking about. And now we're going to have the building block to talk about some really interesting things that are built upon that. Thanks for joining me. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can buy me a coffee directly at buymeacoffee.com/Scott Allen Miller. I will put the link on the screen, and I will put a link down below in the description as well. That comes directly to me. It's like Patreon. It does a lot to help me sponsor this channel, to make this possible. I really appreciate everyone who comes in and does that. If you would like to hire my company, which includes me, for any kind of email consulting or other types of IT needs, that is what we do. We're an IT outsourcer, we're an IT NSP, so we handle absolutely any IT needs that your organization has, whether it's an entire IT department that you need to bring in, or simply specialty skills like high-end message management for email systems. We provide just those pieces to help augment your current team. We can be the backing support that they need to be a more well-rounded team and have more capabilities. You can find us at ntg.co, and you can reach out as simply as emailing sales@ntg.co. I really appreciate anyone who's interested reaching out through that channel. That can actually come directly to me in some cases. I have an amazing team. I've been working there now. This year, we just hit our 24-year mark, so we're just coming up on a quarter century, which I'm very excited about as well. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you all next time as we continue this series and other topics.